And we are recording! Lindsay's back doing comment responses in my Lumen shirt because the work is mysterious and important.
The work is mysterious and important.
Caleb and Matthew's friendship was truly the highlight of season 7, agreed. Honestly, as someone who dislikes Big Mouth but has an attachment to the show, being autistic, seeing Caleb more prominently and less played as a joke was so rewarding. Seeing him actually represent real autistic traits and not be humiliated for it was really heartwarming. I have so many questions. First, I didn't really see Caleb as being played as a joke. I mean, I guess the very first time we see him...
Hi, you're looking at me. How tall are you? There's a monster next to you.
Hey, what's up, Caleb?
But I think I was like, are my dogs gonna be quiet for this? Apparently not. Peg, quiet. She's got the goofiest little face. Okay, I think she's chilling. But what I'm really curious about is you say that you dislike the show, but you have an attachment to it. And clearly you followed it enough to have this much to say about it. And I don't understand people who watch things they don't like. Like, if I'm watching a show and I'm like, I dislike the show, then I stop watching it. So I'm curious why you filed the show under dislike, but also attached. Like, what does that mean to you? Because if I'm attached to something, then I like it. I don't think Matthew is unrealistic in how he handles the situation. I think people of our generation have become very, very good at recognizing the situation. I'm 22 and I work with a lot of neurodivergent children with our Children's Foundation. Good on ya. And the genuine interest that comes from people my age, let alone the people younger than me, is truly inspiring. Fair. Sometimes I have pangs of jealousy about the younger generation. I am 37, for those of you who are curious. Am I 37? Yeah, I'm 37. And yes, the younger generation is far more abstract thinking, far more aware that different people are different and have different needs. And it's not fair. Why weren't people like that when I was 20? I'm just kidding. I love my peers. I love people my age. 37 is a weird, really weird generation because we were all about 15 when the world changed completely. So we were like developed and like, okay, good frame of reference for like my age. I'm a video nerd. That's why my name's Lindsay Makes Videos. So I was an AV nerd in high school. When I started my mass media class, the first semester I was in it, we were using reel-to-reel SVHS tape decks. Second semester, we were all on IMAX. That's when the change happened. The change. I actually really love that Matthew specifically is now on an arc where he's definitively more emotionally mature than his peers. He's had some development in other seasons from mean gay boy to where he just making me think of Caleb when he's like, when Matthew's like, am I just mean and gay? And Caleb's like, yes.
Caleb, do you think I'm just young, gay, and mean?
Yes.
I think it's really nice and not necessarily unrealistic thing to have just one middle schooler in the cast who's surprisingly mature while still having faults, especially with kids these days. Many of them have gotten in substantially more emotional learning in both school and media than we ever did. You know, yeah, it's kind of a controversial subject to say that trauma is good for people or that it creates emotional maturity or that there's good in it. A lot of people are really uncomfortable with that idea because it implies that it kind of supports a lot of bad parenting ideas where like, I'm giving my kids discipline because it's me giving them character. I think it's really just a matter of perspective. I would never in a million years say like, you should make bad things happen to somebody because it's good for them. But at the same time, if you've had bad things happen to you and you can draw strength from it, then you should. And Matthew has grown up in this environment that has been really confusing and a lot of mixed messages about how accepted he is. Because his parents love and accept him and kind of don't. It's a complicated dynamic for, you know, this cartoon that's kind of underrated. But it makes sense to me that having the experience that he's had as a queer kid and wanting to be accepted and received for the things that are unusual about him, it would prime him to want to be more accepting and receptive to somebody who's different. And I think that a lot of us queer neurodivergent people totally get that. Yeah, Matthew's another character that deserves a lot of credit for how much he's grown. I do wonder if anybody knows about this. I wonder if they got shit for that character being like a sassy gay stereotype. And that's what led to that conversation with Caleb where he's like, am I just mean and gay? Because, yeah, they really built a lot on what could have been a very brittle foundation. Matthew and Caleb as friends is just so pure, man. So pure! I want to see Matthew, Caleb, what the hell is his name? Why is my memory the way it is? Jay. I totally spaced his name. Matthew, Caleb, and Jay. I want to see them all be best friends because Jay is super ADHD, Caleb is super autistic, and Matthew is super neurotypical and queer. And I'm immediately thinking of My So-Called Life. If anybody remembers the 90s show My So-Called Life, you got Angela Chase, totally autistic. You have Rayanne, totally ADHD. And then between them, you have neurotypical and queer Ricky Vasquez, just dealing with these wacky characters. It's a good dynamic. Jay and Lola are hilarious, though. I think Caleb wasn't outright said to be autistic because the writers were playing it safe. I did not get the representation wrong. Nothing sucks more than accidentally being the problem. I think there's some truth to that. But everybody's accidentally the problem all the time. I don't know, I kind of feel like we're better off just diving headlong into being accidentally wrong just so we can get corrected and find out what the right answer is. If we tread so carefully that we're afraid of getting something wrong, then we'll never find out what right is. Sometimes the process is just painful. But then also we have to, as a culture, allow people to be wrong sometimes, which we're really fucking bad at. Oh my God. We do not allow people to be publicly wrong, which is a problem because like everyone is public now. Like you cannot exist unless you're perfect. And then if somebody really does fuck up and they go, man, I fucked up, I'm so sorry about that, I'll tread more carefully, people will still not let it go and be like, your apology's not good enough, you shouldn't have done it in the first place, y'all. And then we wonder why we're all so hard on ourselves. Yeah, because we don't allow imperfection from anyone, including ourselves. Let yourself be wrong, let other people be wrong, so we can all learn how to be right. They had said so in the episode when they saw the Statue of Liberty. Mari told Andrew, don't sit with the autistic kid. No, he said the kid doesn't know social cues. He did not say, don't sit with the autistic kid.
No. Don't sit with the kid with the rolly backpack. He can't read social cues.
As someone with bipolar disorder, I have also heard plenty of times the calm down or even worse, stop crying. Can you imagine if we said stop pooping? You know, the natural process that your body is doing to deal with the unpleasantness you're experiencing in your system, the way that your body is naturally primed to process that, don't do it. No pooping, hold it in. That would be ridiculous, and that's how ridiculous it is to tell somebody to stop crying. Not only does it feel like my feelings are not being validated, it makes the negative feelings. Exactly! Our culture has a disease of emotional invalidation. God, I hate that. I live with my grandma and she tries her best, but even then she'll accidentally say really invalidating things. Like instead of telling me I shouldn't be upset, she'll say, I know you can't handle this, or I know you can't handle this? That's interesting. Or try not to throw a fit. It's like half a step short of the support I need. It's validating that my emotions exist while simultaneously implying that I should have more control over them. But she's learning, which I'm extremely grateful for. This is very indicative of, I think, the transition that's happening right now with our culture's emotional intelligence. There are a lot of people who are trying and are learning the importance of validation, but that is just the opposite of how the older generation was taught. Something we talk about a lot is how my friend's dad accidentally traumatized his kids. Even though overall he's a great dad, but accidentally added this trauma just by constantly invalidating emotional experiences with, it's not that scary, you're okay, blah, 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 not knowing that he was actually gaslighting them. Because it naturally, logically follows that if you feel bad, you want to stop feeling bad, right? But stopping feeling bad is a process. It's like pooping. I like that metaphor. You have to process and purge, and the emotions have to run their course. That's how they die out naturally. But if people are in the middle of processing an emotion and you go, stop! Stop emotioning! Emotional constipation. It's not what's supposed to happen. I was told that so much that I did learn how to do it, so people think I'm way more functioning than I am. I just digest the pain alone. Oh. That's why functioning labels are outdated. When you tell a neurodivergent person to act normal, they might be able to, but they won't feel normal. They'll feel 10 times worse. This, and aside of this. I think there's an aspect of this that's really, really, really important to be aware of as an autistic person in particular. Because as an autistic person, we think in binary code. I like this better than black and white thinking, because black and white thinking is like, it's either yes or it's no, or it's right or it's wrong. I like binary better because if you take enough binary code, 10100110001,
Binary solo.
0000001
you can make a very nuanced picture with enough ones and zeros, but if you zoom in close enough, it's just a bunch of ones and zeros, right? So our brains can process nuance and gray area, but we do it because we're thinking about all the ones and zeros. There, if you zoom in close enough, you're gonna find yeses and nos. It's just a tiny yeses and nos in a bigger picture, right? So let's say you got an autistic person and you want them to go on a road trip. I just picked a random thing. Okay, if you ask the binary question to the autistic person, can you go on this road trip? Maybe the answer is yes. Can they pack their stuff and go in the car and sit in there for this many hours and get there? And can they? On a binary level, yes or no. But they might find it really, really exhausting and or really, really physically uncomfortable or be really, really stressed out and exhausted by the packing process. Packing for me is just, sound off if you feel me. Like, we can stop crying. We can, on a yes or no basis, do all of these things, but it's what it costs us. So I think that a lot of autistic people think that they may not be autistic or something like that, because if people are like, well, if you're autistic, you can't read social cues or you can't do these things. But we can do a lot of things that neurotypicals do. The question isn't whether we can or can't, it's how much it exhausts us. It's how much it depletes us. A lot of my memories of my masking life has been exhaustion, because I would always push myself to do the things that I could do, but they weren't healthy for me to do. Yeah, blame the person who doesn't know what to say. Just because you're weak doesn't mean you're special. Everyone has problems, just man up. Remove. Yeah, I agree with you, but, and I'm not deleting this because you said anything wrong here. I'm deleting it because you're responding to a thing that's no longer there. And it's really better not to respond to those people. If anybody says man up, they're not trying to have a rational conversation with you. So I love you, Topaz. Don't take this personally. I was a very huggy person as a child, but at one point couldn't stand being hugged whatsoever because people kept hugging me without warning. Yeah, I don't know if you're autistic or not, but I'm assuming you are because that's kind of the community of these comments. But yeah, this is the autonomy issue with hugging is definitely a thing. I think Matthew reacted like this because he's older brother in the family, not to mention clearly the most different, so he knows how hard it is to be understood. Exactly. I don't know if it's an autism thing, but I love how Caleb says, we will eat unearned pretzels. I often think of good things in my life as rewards and feel guilty indulging without the accomplishment. Very relatable. And it would almost make it easier to eat the pretzels if you first define that they are unearned pretzels, because then it's like, I acknowledge that I'm breaking the rules, but I'm not gonna pretend the rules didn't exist. My parents always established a huggy atmosphere at home, so it was jarring to be at school, and it's not normal to hug everyone you met. Then in high school, I met a guy that always used hugging as his, I don't know why this didn't finish. And in high school, I met a guy that always used hugging as his outro to leave, so I married him. Get it? I kind of had an opposite situation. My mom was not huggy at all. We did not have a huggy house. And then when I went to school and everybody hugged each other, I was like, what's happening? Big Mouth does have some surprisingly great character moments with depth. I only wish the show dialed back the raunchy humor, because the shock humor was overplayed a lot. I think it turned off many folks from the show. I think the emotional struggles teens go through is more important than the sexual awakening aspects to puberty. Maybe if the earlier seasons had leaned more on the character development, and the show would have had a better reputation than it does. Yeah, you and I have a very, very different point of view. You're not wrong. I can't even go as far as to say that I disagree with you, because it's so weird to say you disagree with people about stuff like this, because it's subjective. Like, if you don't like the sexual awakening stuff in the show, you're not wrong. Then again, I think autistic people process facts versus opinions differently, and that's a topic I want to go into in great depth later. But yeah, there are lots of comments about this show being too raunchy and too sexual, and there's this assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this comment sort of reeks of it, that like sexual, explicit humor and content is inherently shallow and just for views and attention and not that important. And I violently, viciously, blood pumping faster disagree with that. I am a queer person. I am a lesbian, as the flag Do you have a flag?
Do you have a flag?
And I did not know that until my 30s because of how strongly I was conditioned by heteronormative messaging. I mean, that's a whole other topic. But especially as an autistic person, not really knowing how to person except for looking at people around me, because of the way that sexual things were sort of swept under the rug, there was a lot of messaging that was really toxic for me and confusing. And because it was like so inappropriate for people of a certain age to talk about or even acknowledge their sexual thoughts and sexual feelings, because that was so wrong, I didn't get the cultural feedback and support to actually help me understand my own sexuality. Like when I was around the age of the characters in Big Mouth, my friends were having sexual thoughts and sexual feelings and they were masturbating but like we didn't talk about that because that's weird and gross and private. So I thought people didn't masturbate, I didn't masturbate until significantly after I lost my virginity. Can I say masturbate on YouTube? Good thing I don't give a shit about ad revenue. We'll see what happens. But like I was well into my adulthood before I had ever actually masturbated. Because as young people, we weren't prepared to be honest and open about anything sexual. Sexuality is not just a thing that people can exploit to sell things or to get attention. It's a fundamental, if you're not ace, then it is a fundamental part of your identity and your soul. That's why it's a big deal when gay people come out. It's not just about getting off. Sexuality is I'm a very, very sexual person that was extremely repressed for stupid reasons. So when I first saw the advertising for Big Mouth, I was like, oh, it's just gonna be gross. I don't like watching gross things. I didn't have any interest, But then when I watched it and saw that it wasn't just about using sex to get attention and to be gross and raunchy, like there's a context in which, like all the stuff about Andrew being so gross and masturbating all the time, a lot of Andrew's story arcs have to do with sexual shame. You'll notice most of the time whenever he has some embarrassing moment that has to do with his masturbation, it's always you can always tie it back to it was his shame that led to it, not necessarily the masturbation itself. It was like shame and paranoia. And then the more he tries to sort of suppress, the more out of control things get. I don't like shock to shock, but I don't think that Big Mouth does that. And also, I don't really like the idea of a show should do things different for a better reputation. Doesn't matter what your reputation is as long as you're reaching the people that the work is for. Unless we're talking about like it has to be successful to make money, and obviously Big Mouth is fine. While yes, the sexualization of kids is uncomfortable, it does give us realistically autistic characters like Caleb. I think it's really worth noting that it's not like adults are sexually attracted to the kids on this show. Like that's not a thing. Like sometimes like the Maury and Andrew relationship is weird because there's like this grown man like trying to encourage this kid to masturbate.
If you want me to go away, you know what you have to do.
I've actually thought that they did a really good job of like keeping that like in a place where it doesn't wig me out personally, but they're like right up on the line, I think, with that relationship. But other than that, it's kids, exploring their sexuality amongst themselves. And so I think that because it's not adults sexualizing kids, it hits different. This is so annoying. Like sometimes it'll cut your comments off, but there's no read more option. And like I have to extend it like this far to get the whole comment. You were saying regarding the backpack, his top 3 didn't include that it rolled. I know, I actually cut out a little bit of what I said because I was like, that was one of the things that was good about the episode is that he listed his priorities and yeah, they found a bag that didn't, like it was beautifully done. I was just kind of chiming in where like, if I loved that backpack, then. I once described wearing a shirt with too much polyester as feeling like my skin turned inside out to an autistic friend. She looked at me with disgust and told me I shouldn't be so sensitive. We are not friends anymore. Yeah, good riddance. God, it's none of your like, why would you, you know what, that's kind of sad. What that kind of, I mean, obviously I don't know because, this is a comment, there's not a lot of information here. But that tells me that they have like a parent or somebody who's really not allowing of them being sensitive to things. And so when they look at you saying that, then it triggers them because they're like, you can't be sensitive about things like shirts. That's the rules that my brain has taken in. you and the cognitive dissonance. I can't be compassionate to you because that would imply that my parents were wrong when they weren't compassionate to me. And we can't have that. Don't fuck up my worldview. I have a feeling that Matthew has an autistic sibling or relative based on his reactions. My twin brother was always the person to talk me down in this kind of situation. It's nice to see myself in Caleb, but as a non-binary, male-presenting person, I would love to see that represented in media. Yeah, actually, we've probably already seen as much of Matthew's family as we're probably going to see in that regard, but I also have friends that aren't autistic that are really good with me when I'm having one of my moments because they have autistic family members. Like one friend of mine in particular who I don't think is autistic, but when I panic, she knows that we need to break things down into components. So she'll be like, okay, so what were you doing? What was happening? What do you need? And like, it makes it so when I have certain kinds of troubles, I know that she's a good person to call because she's going to be able to talk to me in a way that's going to jive with the way my brain works. People have some love-hate relationship with Big Mouth, but I really enjoyed the writing of Matthew and Caleb and them talking about asexuality. That was another thing that I really liked about the new season was acknowledging some of the nuance with asexuality. I actually used Elijah as an example to somebody recently about the underrepresentation of asexuality, and they just basically expanded on my position on Elijah in the new season. I think the point of his new bag being so different was to show that Caleb was more flexible than he realized, or that anyone else realized. No, I kind of touched on this in the last comment response video about why I liked the list of priorities and how I pointed out that Caleb being young now hadn't learned this lesson yet, but now that he's had this experience, in a future situation, if something happens to his security object or something like that, then he knows he can make this like priority list and be like, okay, focus on what needs were being met and not the object itself. This is something that all of us should really take away from this story, from this episode. In fact, it's a good thing to end this video on. We ourselves, as autistic people and the people in our lives, think we are way more rigid and inflexible than we actually are. What we are is we have needs that need to be met, and we are accustomed to having certain things meet those needs. But if we separate the needs themselves from the thing that's meeting those needs, we can think outside of the box, but we just need time. We can't quickly pivot. That's another big thing about the autistic brain. We need to stop and think and take a breath and think about what needs are being met and think about other ways to meet those needs, and we can adapt. Now I kind of wish I had my 7 of 9 shirt. I have a 7 of 9 from Star Trek Voyager shirt that says, I will adapt.
I will adapt.
Another fantastic autistic coded character.
Describe the nature of your sexual relationship with Lieutenant Paris.
If you guys want me to talk about 7 of 9, let me know because I will do it. So I think that's where we're going to call it today. The comment response thing was fun last time, so I thought, do it again. But yeah, give me more comments. I love the comments. Let me know if you want me to talk about 7 of 9. Another idea that I've had floating around is to do The Extraordinary Attorney Woo. There's really good moments in that, and I actually still need to finish it. I forgot I didn't finish it. There's so much TV. But yeah, see you next time. End transmission.
My safety doesn't rely on everyone liking me.